All right, everybody. This video is going out to all my InformNet students. Just a quick sort of snapshot of where we are and what's going on at this point. So I'm guessing you guys all are at this point logging into InformNet. You're from here, you're going to your course, whether it's Computer Science 30 or Computer Science 40. From here, you've read my course description of what the course is about. And now you may have been getting my course announcements of the things. I started with a quick hello announcement, and now I laid out an announcement of kind of the setup of the site. It's all there for you to read. You can certainly email me at any point if you want to ask a question. Go ahead and email me and let me know what you need in terms of help. Okay. Boop. Help, and you can email me anytime. So you're going to email me. There you go. If you find the email system through InformNet is not working for you, I can understand it is a little bit on the frustrating side sometimes. You are welcome to use another email system to email me, for example, Gmail, if you'd like. The email that you will see at various places throughout my presentations is mrlwalks@gmail.com. Okay, and that's another way you can certainly email me, whatever way you find easier, and I should be able to get back to you from either of those systems. Okay, so then I should be able to, as you can see here, reply either here or through InformNet. You will eventually get your response from me, and you'll be able to read it, right, and move on from there. So that's the first thing, is you certainly can email me at any time, okay? So once you go in and take a look at the modules, and you go into each module and you read through whichever way you're comfortable reading through the various modules, either by clicking here or whichever way you're comfortable. As you read through the modules, you will find some of the modules will then have this section that says work along, okay? The section that says work along, very important that I would strongly suggest that you try this example, as it says there. This will give you a reference of a bunch of things that you can use. If you read through Module 0, the Getting Started module, okay, and you either read through it or you went and watched my YouTube video on how to get started in NetBeans and setting up a project and things like that, and all the things that are part of that. That would have got you started with building up the example you would need when you go into the first module. That will be a good reference for you as you're working through that. So let's say you did in fact do that. So at this point you'd have this completed example if you have gone through the entire first module, all the way through to the 5th part where you worked along and got through all the way to there. It even describes how to start an assignment as well. But I'm going to kind of do that as well. So you would have had this large example that you'd set up here in InformNet, an example with all the code in there. The other thing too, as it has linked in here, if you had trouble with the example at all, you can click on the link here to the GitHub site. And on the GitHub site that I've provided for you, from there you can go right in and access the example that way as well. You can, for example, download the entire example as a download if you want. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why can't I just download the example? What's the point in doing it? It's the learning, right? Doing the example will help you learn. It'll really help reinforce it. Rather than me giving you a bunch of questions and things like that on how to do it, I'd rather you just hands-on do the example with me. So there, from the GitHub site, you can go in, and even if you needed a little piece of the code rather than all of it, like for example, some of the comments that I put in there, you can copy and paste it right in to your project. Okay, So now that I have an example done, now that I've read through the whole first module and sort of got a grip on the first module on the introduction and getting started in Java. Now maybe I move on to the very first assignment. So under assessments, under module 1, okay, here, this is the end of module 1. If you want, you can certainly look at the review sheet. This covers sort of all the stuff in module 1 in a really compact way, really sort of a study sheet, something you could print if you need it. But then you open the assessments document, which is essentially the assignment. So with me, you do not need to do all of these programming problems. You pick through the ones that you'd like to try. So say I want to try this one with the temperature converter one. Maybe that one doesn't interest me. Maybe I'd rather look at one that has more of a math slant to it, or one that maybe has a little more fun for me. Maybe I'm looking for something that has sort of a game aspect to it. So maybe I like this rock, paper, scissor one. So imagine I went to do either of those problems, the temperature converter one or the rock, paper, scissor one, okay? I would set up a new project, let's say the temperature converter, and I would go in and do that particular problem, okay? This is covered as well in one of my other videos where you can see how I do that, but I'm just going to pause the video for a sec and complete this. Okay, so I've finished the two problems, the temperature converter problem here, the temperature converter, and then something a little more interesting, the rock, paper, scissor problem. So in the first one, I just did a basic job on that one, and in the second one, I spent a little more time and sort of laid it out a little better in terms of how well I solved the problem, just so I can show you kind of the different ways it would be marked. So anyways, I'm going to pause the video for a second and turn both of these into PDFs with screen captures so that I can hand them in. And again, if you missed how to do that, you can watch a different video for that one, or email me and I'll give you a link to that video. Okay, so again, if you can watch that other video, but I went to File, Print, and had the code all set, and then when I ended up printing it, I went to PDF to turn it into a PDF. There was also a couple settings to change in there, and again, you can watch the other video, but here you can see now that the PDF is created with all the code in there, and now I'm going to pause and put some screen captures in. Okay, so now I have screen captures. You can see here the temperature converter has the two screen captures, and the rock, paper, scissor, which is a lot more code, has a few more screen captures in it. And now, with both of those saved, I would hand them in. Okay, as an InformNet student, the way you would do that, of course, would be under assignments, under that particular assignment for that thing, you would submit the assignments. Whoops. Let's go back and try that again. There we go. So we would browse and grab those assignments. I think you can do both at once. There they are. They're ready for attachment, and I would submit those. Just going to pause the video and let that happen. Okay, so once those are submitted, obviously I will get them and mark them. And then after they're corrected, you can see how you did by looking in the handback folder. So in student handback, this will create a link to an outside folder where you can look at your work by finding your folder and getting it handed back there. Okay, so now let's take a look at how I would actually grade these assignments and how you would see sort of some information about your grade. So I'm going to once again open that handback folder and go into the folder for this particular student. Of course, I've called them a test student. Here you will see your actual assignment handed back to you. And if you see these yellow little speech bubbles with the arrows on them, yellow arrow bubbles, this will tell you kind of where I've reduced your mark. If you don't see any of those, like on this rock, paper, scissor one, then that probably means I didn't reduce your mark. It was essentially a perfect assignment at that point. You can submit your assignment as many times as you want. So if you want to resubmit this assignment with that fix, you can do that. I don't always recommend that necessarily. What you could do instead is just submit a different assignment, because in a minute as I talk about that, the total points, that will matter. Okay, so what I want you to see now is what I see on my end as the teacher going in to mark this. So I obviously have seen your assignment and I've made some comments on there. So now I'm going to go in and assess that assignment. So from here I would have selected that you had handed in the rock, paper, scissors program and that you had handed in the radio temperature converter. So each of these has a different mastery factor, which you can see over here. So 1 mastery for the temperature converter and actually 1.5, so it's worth more points for the rock, paper, scissors. I'm going to assume at this point for this unit that you've solved both of those problems. So problem solving, you're going to get 5 out of 5. If you want to read in more detail what this section of the marking is about, you can go to the second page of this marking sheet. And here it describes what I mean by what I'm looking for solving the problem. And it depends on which course you're in. If you're in the Computer Science 30S, my expectations are different than the 40S versus the 20S, which I know I don't teach online right now. So that's how I assess that. So you did solve the problem. The temperature converter program worked. The rock, paper, scissors program worked. Let's jump ahead. Some of these are not affected right now by the marks because this will come up in further units. Storage, which you can read, is what I'm going to be marking on. Addresses how you stored your data. So in a 30S course, that's the use of just variables. Later, that will include arrays and things like that. If you're in the 40S course, it's obviously a little more complicated, the data structures you'd use. So anyways, if I look at that, I think for both problems, you used appropriate data storage. Whoops. So I'm going to give you 5 out of 5 on those two. As I start entering these marks, you can see over here, the points start going up. So total points so far times the mastery. As well, you'll see points start adjusting down here automatically. You won't see this because you'll just see the finished product. But all of the scores are added in there. Okay, logic. Again, I'm going to give each one 5 out of 5. If you say use extra code when you could have used a loop or something like that, that would have been affected. Now I move to comments and I take a look at that first one. There's some things with comments here that isn't quite right. There's also some stuff with style, capitalization, or indenting. So for those, I wouldn't be giving full marks for the CRAP radio. I would be giving full marks for the rock, paper, scissors game. But for this one, maybe a 3. This one may be a 3. Okay? But the presentation mark, if you read through here, is basically did you solve it? Did you present it to me properly? Did you hand it in right? So you're getting 5 marks just for handing it in properly. If, for example, you forgot to include your screen captures in your handout, so for some reason you didn't include these, that could cost you marks in that section, but that looks good. Finally, the innovation, like how innovative, this is sort of a holistic mark on the whole thing. So again, rock, paper, scissors is going to get a full 5 marks, whereas the CRAP radio is going to get a lower mark because it wasn't quite presented properly. And so there's the totals there. 29 on this one, 52.5. Those are getting added together, and right now the unit outcomes are coming in here. So far, this student has earned 81.5 points total for the unit, although that's broken up into the 4 individual sections. Now, when you as a student go into your handback folder, you'll be able to take a look at that marking sheet that I was just showing you. It will now have updated marks in there showing you each of those point totals. So you can zoom in and take a look at which assignments were done, what your marks were. Okay. You can also go into the assignment itself and look at maybe why I reduced a mark. And you can certainly email me if you have any questions or want to challenge me, which I absolutely encourage students to do. If you feel I was unfair in taking a mark off, challenge me. Usually you'll win that challenge and I'll give you the mark in the end. Again, this is all about learning to program. So the more you program, the more of these will go on there, the more your mark will go up. So just keep programming. Even if you don't get one perfectly right, even if you never solve it, try it out, hand it in as is, you're still going to get points. It's still going to add on to your total. Now, students ask me, how many of these should I be doing? Should I be doing 1, 2, 3? It's a really hard question to answer because it depends which ones you do. Some are worth more points, some are worth less points. So the answer is just keep programming on a schedule until you feel you've reached enough points to kind of max out how many points you could get for the mark you want. Essentially, a simple way to think of it is 100 points equals 100%. Now that 100 points, though, is split up amongst the different categories, right? So you can see that this student is getting 81 points here, but they're not 81 for each column, right? So they're getting 23 out of 40 points here. They're getting 25 out of 30 points here. But let's say they did do some more work, and I'm not going to bother filling in which assignments they did here. Let's say they got some 5-point assignments here, and this one was a mastery of 1. And then they got some 5-point assignments here. I'm just giving this student some test marks here. And then this one was a mastery of 1.3, okay? So now you can see they've actually achieved 162 points for this unit, but each of these is now full. They've got 65 points here, 65 points here, 65 points here, 65 points here. When the unit's done, they will do a unit quiz, and the unit quiz is going to be out of 26 points. Oops. Okay, let's say they did pretty good. Let's say they got 25 out of 26 points. When I later go in, I'll fill that into the marking sheet as well, the 25 out of 26 on the quiz, and that will round up all the marks for the entire unit. This student's unit mark would be 98.6. That's a really good mark, right? Let's say they didn't do as well on the quiz. Let's say they got 10 out of 26 on the quiz. Obviously lower. Okay, quizzes are worth 35%, so it's still going to end up with a unit mark of 78% for this unit in each of the 4 categories. Okay, that's what will show up in your grade. You'll see the final tally from this mark sheet. Okay, let's say you're more of a student that does well on quizzes. Let's say you got that 26 out of 26 on the quiz. But you didn't do some of those assignments, so they weren't actually a Mastery 1. I'll just set them to 0, so they're getting 0 points. Okay, and let's say this one, you didn't do the rock, paper, scissors problem. So you only did 1 problem. You did really well in the quiz, but you only handed in 1 thing, the CRAP radio, and you only got 29 points on it. So you can see here, this will affect your mark as well. Okay, so now your point totals will be different down here because of the way it's scored. Now, because it wasn't full marks in each area, that would be a little different. Now, if I switch this to 0 and this to 1, the rock, paper, scissors, then it's going to, again, change those marks in different ways. So it's, I think, a very fair system for you kids. It earns you a lot of points and makes it easier for you to do well in a unit. The quiz is a small portion of it, but the larger portion is just solving problems, and you have lots of choices of ways you can do it. You don't have to do each problem perfectly. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to necessarily solve the problem as long as you're handing them in. Okay? So that sort of concludes this video, just sort of really showing how to go through an assignment, what it looks like on my end, how the marks go. If you have any questions, just email me.